comes to IPL and laser regulations, this is an area that APAN is highly committed and heavily involved, as we strongly believe that the safety of both the practitioner and the consumer is at risk, and there's more and more evidence that we need to get this right. So our efforts so far have not reached where we want it to happen, but however, we have some really good news, and that currently the federal government is looking at a national strategy, which is wonderful news because we can learn from the past and we can develop a national program that's going to suit every state and bring uniformity across all jurisdictions. And I think that will be a wonderful outcome for all of us. Now, today I have the pleasure of interviewing a charming young gentleman called Alex Korenevski. And several weeks ago, he had approached me because he was doing a research paper with the University of Queensland on regulation of intense pulse light treatments. And Alex's internship allowed him to navigate this space and really investigate what's going on in the industry and provide a fantastic report, which I caught up with him 2 weeks ago, and he had, I was delighted to see the end result, which was amazing. So today I am thrilled to be inviting Alex to join us, and so we can have a conversation about some of his findings in that report. And also, may I say that it has some excellent information, and it's very, very timely because we can actually use that report now it can be a catalyst towards what we are trying to achieve, because his research is validating some of the things that we've been saying. And now we have a formal platform, formal document that actually proves the reason why we need to go down that road. So, Alex, welcome. It's a real pleasure for me to for me to interview you and for you to agree to take the time to have a conversation with us. So, my first question to you is, why did you choose the subject of regulation for IPL treatments for Queensland?
Yeah, Tina, first of all, thank you for having me. Who knew that all these months ago in the beginning of this year that that would lead me right here to having this conversation with you. So thank you for having me. It's great to be back for the first time, sorry. So yeah, so a bit about this project. So as part of my university placement through university, so I was positioned with a Queensland state parliamentarian. And so I was required to produce a research report on a particular topic of interest to them. And so prior to our first meeting, I had some ideas about a few topics that my report could investigate. But it turns out the state member had an idea of their own. And this was the regulation of intense pulse light treatment in Queensland. And it turns out the issue was that there was and still is no regulation of IPL treatment in Queensland. In other words, there are no official licensing or education requirements to administer IPL, which are treatment for cosmetic purposes in Queensland. And this has been to the detriment of many consumers who continue to suffer serious adverse effects of improper IPL practices or even faulty IPL machinery. And so my role was to provide the background research for the state members' consideration in their efforts to introduce a regulatory framework for IPL treatment in Queensland. And mind you, I must admit, I'm a bit embarrassed about this, but prior to that meeting, I had no idea what IPL treatment was. I'd never heard of the term before.
Now.
Yeah, I do now. Oh God. Oh geez, had to turn my science brain on for a bit there. And so a fish out of water, I think, is the most accurate image to describe how I was feeling in that moment and diving into this research. But the more I read, the more I researched, the more people I came into contact with, the more I also came to realize the extent of this issue. And also I was exposed to the frustration of many of who feel that progress in this issue has been stagnated. But at the same time, I've also felt the enthusiasm and drive of many people such as yourself who want to see consumers and practitioners alike benefit from a safer industry.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because Queensland, everyone says Queensland's regulated, but it's only for laser. And if you're operating an IPL machine, that doesn't apply to you. So therefore, there's a little space here where people are escaping, and yet there's a lot of IPL machines, probably more than laser machines. Okay, did you uncover any similarities between IPL and laser in terms of adverse injuries? And do you believe that each modality needs its own separate regulation, or should there be a combined regulation that addresses both modalities? So how are the injuries? How did you compare the injuries? Were they similar?
Yeah, a very important question there, Tina. So in terms of the first question, yes, IPL shares very similar injuries with laser treatments, including but not limited to burns, eye damage, changes in skin pigmentation, and infections. And these can be caused by the use of IPL equipment by an untrained technician, or faulty IPL machinery, or even just a failure to consult with the patient effectively about their individual skin needs. And the thing that I found most peculiar, Tina, was that these similarities are acknowledged by Queensland Health. Yet class 4 lasers are regulated, yet IPL treatment is still not. And perhaps some may agree with me, but or disagree. There seems to be some sort of logical inconsistency there. And on the other hand, the two treatments are distinct in their applications. And so it is important that IPL equipment is not used as a substitute for laser purposes and vice versa. And so to answer your second question, I believe that IPL should be considered with laser treatment under future legislation within that kind of umbrella term of non-ionizing radiation. And this requires, but this absolutely requires education and training to operate effectively. However, that legislation also needs to make clear the distinction between the two treatments and make it a requirement that consumers are properly informed of those distinctions, especially by practitioners so that consumers are equipped to make the right choice for themselves when undergoing cosmetic procedure treatment.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Okay. Part of the reason why lasers were regulated was that Queensland was the first state that actually established regulations for lasers, and it was like about 20 years ago when they first came to Australia. So back then there were more lasers. IPLs happened a little bit later, so in some ways we got stuck with the past, and it's time to be, to update on the current evidence of what's really happening. Okay, so my next question is, what are some of the adverse injuries that you uncovered? And were they, people think, oh, you get burnt and then you recover. Were there permanent injuries?
Yeah, this is kind of one of the more confronting stage of my research personally, because I saw many examples and images of horrific permanent scarring that was inflicted onto individuals due to improper use of IPL technology. And this was just absolutely heartbreaking, even as an outsider from this industry. And I really felt for those consumers who are now facing the aftermath of these horrific experiences. And they have not only affected them physically, but mentally as well, as they may be now experiencing difficulty in socializing and being seen outdoors, which can have a really negative impact on their self-esteem.
Well, apart from the emotional trauma, it would be traumatic also for the practitioner, because sometimes if they didn't know how to prevent it, how they're going to navigate forward when they haven't identified where they missed the mark and what was the cause of it. So that's a very important thing. Now, the next question, it was a discussion that we had about, you're talking about research, not just Australia, what was happening in the UK. So compared to Australian standards, Alex, what is happening in the UK, and what did you discover that was interesting?
Yeah, so wow, this is something I didn't even this was a really interesting and fascinating part of my research. And so to the best of my knowledge, the UK has regrettably deregulated its cosmetic industry. However, if we examine more closely the regulatory situation within the London boroughs, which are the local authority districts in Greater London, Both, we can find that both IPL and laser treatments are regulated under the local authority, London Local Authorities Act of 1991. And so if we take the example, for example, for laser treatments in Queensland, you'll find that our regulatory standards require that businesses have a possession license and a license for use.
Correct.
However, the London boroughs dictate that to practice IPL and laser treatments, which are also recognized as special treatments, practitioners must obtain what is known as a special treatment license. So in other words, it can also be considered like a premise license in which the license holder ensures the safe operation of the entire premise, which includes having the practitioners of those special treatments obtain the appropriate qualifications for those treatments in delivering those special treatments. And so there are also many other terms and conditions that must be met that the prospective license holder must meet in order to be granted the special treatment license, such as maintaining the safety of the equipment and used in connection with the special treatment, and also maintaining the cleanliness and hygiene of the premise itself.
Right.
And so now there are of course exceptions as there is with any legislation. But for example, you don't have to have a special treatment license to use this machinery so long as you're under the direct supervision of a registered health practitioner when you're operating those machines. But all in all, I found it to be a very extensive set of prerequisites and safety precautions that must be addressed in order to obtain these special treatment licenses in the London boroughs.
Well, England actually introduced some really good education in the early days when we first got lasers, and a lot of people actually going to England to do their qualifications there, which was really interesting.
I didn't know about that. See, I'm still learning more. So I know about the qualifications, but it's great that it's interesting that people are going to England now, but how good if it would be if we had some of those same standards here as well.
Well, interestingly, the UK allows non-medical practitioners with the right standards to operate lasers, but the USA only allows medical practitioners to use IPL or laser. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that in Australia, we had strong associations that fought for qualification updates, and also we also have degrees that allow for higher learning, and so even now that we through the vet system, there are advanced diplomas that have been developed that include laser and IPL and the appropriate competencies that are needed to operate safely. So I really believe that, from a regulatory perspective, we are seeing the government's moving in a lot of different areas that pertain to our industry to ascertain safety, because it is becoming very much a consumer requirement, especially with the COVID situation that's impacting people. They're very, very conscious of how do we can we be assured that we're going to be safe. But also, I think with all the burns, as you saw, they hit the media, and the media was splashing some terrible things of unqualified people who had no idea what they were doing, burning innocent people that were going there to get a treatment and were disfigured and caused huge traumas. And the idea that some of those scars can actually become permanent is quite disappointing and alarming. Okay, so is there anything that you feel from the English model that would be wise for us to also consider?
See, I believe that the English model is quite, what I like about the English model is that, well, there's a few things there. It's a lot more broad. So there's a lot more specific prerequisites that need to be met in order to achieve this one license, the special treatment license. But what the English model does, it does, what's I think is also for us to keep in mind is that the English model, it also considers IPL and laser treatments to be as part of the highest group of cosmetic treatments that could pose the highest risk to consumers. So there's some foreign evidence there that of a foreign authority that that agrees with our position here that laser and IPL treatments, they are distinct but the same in terms of the adverse effects. And so particularly we need to make sure that our licensing requirements take that into account. But that kind of broad picture, I think, was quite appealing. I'm not sure, this would have to be discussed and consulted with other industry experts. But what do you think? Having that umbrella kind of legislation, having all these prerequisites for the safe operations of these premises, I think that's very worthwhile to consider.
Well, I think the premises comes under council in Australia. In terms of competencies, we want to see it moved into a qualification rather than just a license, because a license looks at the safety parameters. It doesn't look at efficacy. And when you're treating somebody, how you diagnose them, how you determine their needs, and how you navigate between an IPL or a laser, and where you pull the boundaries of where you can go with that condition or not, is not really a license issue. You won't learn that through a license. A license will teach you the safety, the physics of light, and how to operate in a safe manner. But then there's the issue of, you can also be sued if you don't deliver the right results to a client. It's not just about burning them. So I think we've matured enough to really, now that we have several qualifications, to look at having them incorporated in the new strategy, federal strategy that we're looking at, because that will ensure just another level of knowledge that we can include. I think when you don't have a qualification covers hours, it covers physics, it covers practical training, it covers adverse reactions, but also it covers how do you determine which way to address a specific skin condition, whether it's pigmentation or tattoo removal, whether it's looking at skin rejuvenation or vascular lesions. So learning the safety parameters of how to navigate these treatments really comes under a qualification. And the problem we have with just licenses, because you've got to have this little license and that little license, because collectively they are trying to get to the place of competency. But as you would know, being a university student, that there is line upon line and precept upon precept when you learn something that is more comprehensive, and there is a qualification attached to it rather than just a license. And I think that's really where we're maturing to go. So the other thing,
if I may add something to that as well, it's I realize a lot of the terminology I've been saying like appropriately qualified, and it's who is to decide what is appropriate in this instance. I mean, sometimes it's clear what's definitely not enough, but I think we need to really have a serious conversation about exactly what would be a appropriate qualification in order to achieve this laser and IPL qualification. So, and that could be just on a case-by-case basis, or there could be definite, there should be definite categories there for what each prospective license holder have to achieve. Is it a certain number of hours, or it's based on their competency? So these questions need to be asked as well.
Yeah, because appropriate can be interpreted differently by different people. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so my last question is, overall, what did your research identify? So if you were to sum up, okay, from this study, this is what I believe I got out of it, and this is what I believe I can encourage an industry to move into.
Exactly. So IPL treatment is a very popular treatment. That much is evident. However, they can also pose very serious risks to the consumer. And so there's what my research has identified. In short, there's a serious lack of regulation in Queensland that requires practitioners to have the appropriate level of education here that will allow consumers to be better protected. Mm-hmm. So I believe that prospective regulation should address the issue of faulty equipment as well, because they can also pose high risks to consumer safety, even in the hands of the most competent practitioner. Sure. So finally, collaboration with industry experts is absolutely essential in dealing with this issue. And this issue has plagued the industry for so long now, it seems. And I hope my research will just even a little bit help to form the foundation of a Queensland initiative, in this case, that can inspire other states to follow suit and start addressing this issue more efficiently, more effectively, that has been affecting Queenslanders and Australians for so long now.
Thank you so much, Alex. I just want to thank you on behalf of APAN and also the industry for your wonderful work and the comprehensive report that you've put together. And I want to promise you that I will put it to good use and towards a regulatory initiatives that are happening at the moment. I'm sure it will be a catalyst for a better industry. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the very, very best for your future career. We're very grateful.
It's been my absolute privilege and honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.